Your phone starts ringing. You glance at the screen. It's a number you recognize. Maybe it's your friend. Maybe it's your mom. Maybe it's someone you actually like. And yet, your stomach drops. Your heart rate spikes. You stare at it buzzing on the table like it's a bomb about to detonate. You let it go to voicemail. Again. Then you text them, "Sorry, can't talk right now. What's up?" And here's the thing. You weren't busy. You just couldn't do it. If this is you, welcome. You're about to understand why your brain treats phone calls like a threat. And today, we're breaking down the psychology of people who hate phone calls. The ones who will do anything, send a 10-paragraph text, write an email, show up in person just to avoid picking up that phone. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth. Hating phone calls doesn't make you antisocial. It doesn't mean you don't care about people. And it definitely doesn't mean you're rude. Your brain just processes real-time, unscripted communication as a high-stakes performance. And not everyone's wired to thrive under that kind of pressure. Society acts like phone calls are simple. Just pick up, say hello, talk, hang up. Easy, right? But for millions of people, it's not easy. It's exhausting. And there's genuine psychology behind why. First, let's talk about the script needer. This person doesn't hate talking to people. They hate talking to people without preparation. A phone call is immediate. It's unpredictable. You don't know what the other person will say, what questions they'll ask, or how long the conversation will last. There's no time to think, edit, or rehearse your response. For the script needer, that lack of control feels like being thrown on stage without knowing your lines. Psychologists call this prefrontal cortex overload. When you're texting or emailing, your brain has time to process, organize, and craft a response. But a phone call demands instant output. And for people whose brains work best with processing time, that real-time demand creates anxiety. It's not about being slow. It's about being thoughtful. The script needer wants to give you their best answer, not their fastest one. And phone calls don't allow for that. So they avoid them entirely, not because they don't care, but because the format doesn't match how they think. Then there's the auditory processor. This person struggles with phone calls because they rely heavily on visual cues to understand communication. In face-to-face conversations, they read body language, facial expressions, gestures. Those signals tell them when to speak, when to listen, how the other person is really feeling. But on a phone call, all of that disappears. You're left with just a voice. No context. No visual feedback. Just sound. And that creates a strange kind of communication blindness. Research shows that people who are highly visual learners experience more stress during phone calls because their brain is searching for information that isn't there. They're listening to the words, but they're also trying to mentally picture the person, guess their mood, interpret tone without any visual confirmation. It's like trying to watch a movie with the screen turned off. Technically, you can still hear the dialogue, but you're missing half the story. That's why these people prefer video calls or in-person conversations. Not because they're difficult, but because their brain needs the full picture to feel comfortable. Now let's talk about the time protector. This person hates phone calls because phone calls are time thieves. You can't control when they start or when they end. Someone calls, and suddenly you're locked into a conversation with no clear exit. You can't skim it. You can't respond when you're ready. You have to engage right now, for however long the other person decides. It's an interruption with no boundaries. For the time protector, this feels like an invasion of autonomy. They value control over their schedule, their energy, their mental space. And a phone call says, "Drop everything. I need you now." Even if the caller doesn't mean it that way, that's how it registers. Studies on asynchronous communication preference show that people who value autonomy and deep work are significantly more stressed by synchronous communication like phone calls. It's not about avoiding people. It's about protecting flow states, focus, and the ability to respond thoughtfully instead of reactively. That's why they prefer texts or emails. Not because they're cold, but because they can engage on their own terms without sacrificing their entire afternoon to a conversation that could have been a paragraph. And then there's the performance anxious. For this person, phone calls feel like being put on the spot. Every silence is awkward. Every feels like failure. They worry they're talking too much or not enough. They overthink their tone. Did that sound rude? Did I interrupt them? Are they bored? Should I have laughed there? The phone call becomes a live audition for social competence. And the stakes feel impossibly high. Neuroscience backs this up. Research on social anxiety shows that phone calls activate the same stress response as public speaking for some individuals. Why? Because there's no opportunity to edit. Every word you say is permanent. Every pause is noticeable. And unlike texting where you can delete and rewrite, a phone call is happening in real time. Your brain treats it like a performance being judged. And for the performance anxious, that judgment, real or imagined, is unbearable. So they avoid the stage entirely. Here's what's fascinating. Studies measuring cortisol levels show that people who hate phone calls experience measurable stress spikes when their phone rings. It's not dramatic. It's not exaggerated. Their body is genuinely reacting to the call as a stressor. And here's the kicker. That stress doesn't exist with texts or emails. Same person, same message, different format, completely different nervous system response. So, if you're someone who feels relief every time a call goes to voicemail, you're not overreacting. Your body is telling you something real. The question is, are you avoiding phone calls because the format doesn't suit you? Or are you avoiding them because something deeper, like social anxiety or past negative experiences, is making all communication feel unsafe? And here's the part society refuses to accept. Phone calls aren't inherently better than texts. They're not more personal. They're not more mature. They're just one form of communication. And acting like someone's preference for texting makes them antisocial or disconnected is, frankly, outdated. Different people have different communication styles. Some thrive in spontaneous, real-time conversation. Others need space to think, process, and respond. Neither is wrong. They're just different. So, if you're the person who sees a phone call and immediately feels dread, who rehearses voicemails 3 times before leaving one, who would rather drive across town than make a 5-minute call, let me tell you this. You're not broken. You're not avoiding connection. You're just protecting your brain from a format that feels more like a performance than a conversation. And that's completely valid. Tell me, do you hate phone calls too? Or are you one of those people who actually prefers them? Drop your side in the comments. And hey, I'd tell you to call me about it, but something tells me you'd rather just leave a comment instead. See you in the next one.